Hello, good evening, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session in NCERT Fundamentals Initiative, where we are taking up the chapters from the NCERT books which are relevant for the civil services examination, and we are discussing the concepts given in these chapters. In today's session, we will have a look at one chapter from class 12th economy book titled Balance of Payments. Now, if you are specifically looking at, sir, which is the title of the book? What is the title of the chapter? Class 12th book is titled as Introductory Macroeconomics, and in that, the chapter number 6 titled Open Economy Macroeconomics. In this, there is a lot of discussion regarding the concept of balance of payments. Let's understand the concept today. But before that, to clear the civil services examination, you require a holistic coverage of the static portion as well as current affairs. You need to have sufficient practice to answer MCQs as well as descriptive questions. And whenever the need arises, you need certain assistance from a mentor. If you are an English medium student or one who wants to learn in Hindi or wants to have a combination of both English as well as Hindi, we have Achievers English batch for you, the Summit batch which will be conducted in English, and we also have Shikhar batch which is exclusively for Hindi learning students. All of the features that I told just now are available at a price of 29,999 rupees to you now. If you are interested, please do check out the details. The link is provided in the description below. Now let me start with the basic concept here. We say that Indian economy is an open economy. But what do you understand by the term open economy here? Whenever there are transactions which are conducted between one country with the rest of the world. I repeat, whenever there are transactions which are conducted between one country with the rest of the world, we generally refer to this country to be following a concept of open economy. Now, what kind of transactions are you looking at? Let me take an example here. India and let's say rest of the world, USA, China, UK, Japan, etc. Is it okay if I say India will export goods and services to many of these countries and India also imports goods and services? Apart from the goods and services, lot of investments will flow from USA into India and from India to USA, from UK to India, India to UK. Lot of labor movement also happens. Lot of investment in the stock market also takes place between India and the rest of the world. Now, whenever such transactions will happen, such an economy which is allowing such transactions is said to be following the concept of open economy. It's a very simple concept. Again, I reiterate just to consolidate the point here. Any country which will allow the transactions to take place between itself and rest of the world, such a country is said to be following open economy. But let's go to the point number 2 now. Whenever these transactions will take place, there will be certain instances where you need to convert rupee to dollar. Again, I'm assuming dollar is a universal currency here, and all the trade, that's the assumption, all the trade that we do, all the investments that we do is done in terms of dollars. Although please understand, most of the trade that India conducts and most of the trade that is done in the global market, the settlement or let's say the usual trade is conducted in terms of dollar itself. So whenever you conduct trade, you need to convert, let's say, rupee to dollar, and there will be certain instances where you need to convert the dollars into rupees. Now, these transactions are generally facilitated and conducted in a market which is called as a forex market. Forex basically stands for foreign exchange market. In a nutshell, in a short form, it is referred to as a forex market. Now, please understand, whenever these transactions will happen, either the currencies will come into India or the currencies will go out of India. Somebody has to keep a record of all of the transactions. I repeat, because of these transactions, there will be imports. There will be certain very important import transactions that will lead to inflow of dollars as well as outflow of dollars. Import transactions as well as export transactions. Now, there has to be somebody who will keep a track of all such transactions. And the duty of this is allocated to Reserve Bank of India, RBI, Reserve Bank of India. In fact, when you study about the functions of RBI, there is one very important function. RBI is the custodian, RBI is the manager of forex reserves in India, which essentially means RBI will hold all the forex reserves in India, and RBI, in performing this particular duty, will publish a document, will basically record all the transactions and publish a document which is essentially a record of all the transactions. And this record of all the transactions, that is inflow of currencies as well as outflow of currencies, the record is essentially called as balance of payments. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement again. The record of all of these transactions that will either lead to inflow of the currencies into India or the outflow of currencies from India, these are called as balance of payments. And looking at the balance of payments, you can realize or you can understand whether India overall is liable to pay dollars to the rest of the world, or India has to receive dollars from the rest of the world. If there is, right, let's say a trade conducted, is India having a deficit or a surplus because of this? I have not yet discussed what is a deficit, what is a surplus. Please hold on to it. So that is the importance of preparing balance of payment. Now, how is the balance of payment represented? Reserve Bank of India will follow certain guidelines and prepare the balance of payments. Although IMF, International Monetary Fund, IMF says the balance of payments will have three accounts. One is the current account, second one is the capital account, and the third one is the financial account. Reserve Bank of India publishes the balance of payments under two accounts, essentially taking all the transactions which are to be provided under the financial account, they will merge that into the capital account itself. That's the reason when you read, let's say, a book, or let's say in the newspaper regarding balance of payment, most of the times in the context of India, they will discuss two accounts. One is the current account, second one is the capital account. Now, what is the basic meaning of the term current and capital account? Please understand, whenever the transactions that are conducted between India and rest of the world are going to affect, let's say, the income of India or the income transactions, or these are transfer payments, these are associated with the trade, etc. All these transactions are mentioned, recorded under the current account. I repeat, income related transactions, the transfer payment transactions, or the transactions related to a trade, that is imports, exports of goods and services, all of those are recorded under the current account. Whereas any transaction between India and rest of the world that will influence assets and liabilities, those transactions are recorded under the capital account. Let me give you certain examples here. When India will import, India will export, there will be either inflow or the outflow of the dollars or the currencies accordingly. For example, India, if they import goods or a service, there is outflow of dollars. If India will export goods and services, which India does by the way, there will be inflow of dollars into the domestic market. So this is a kind of a transaction which is recorded under the current account. Second, concept of remittances. Remittances are nothing but transfer payments. And please understand, transfer payments essentially mean the money is transferred from one party to another party. That is, from one side to another side, money is transferred, but in return, no goods or services are accepted. That is essentially called as a concept of transfer payment. For example, Government of India is involved in transfer of payments. Lot of welfare payments are done by the government, such as, let's say, welfare payments in the form of pensions to poor people. So in such cases, the government will simply transfer the money and in return does not take any good or a service from the acceptor or a beneficiary. In the same way, if you are a software engineer, let's say you will go to USA for a duration of 4 months, 5 months. You will earn salary and part of your earning, you will send it back to your parents, you will send it back to your siblings, and if you are married, to your spouse, if you have children, to your children. So this is essentially money that has been transferred, remittances that has been transferred, and in return, you do not collect any good or a service. I hope you understand that. If you want to check it out, please do check it out. Once you go to USA, send back any amount of money to your parents and in return tell your parents, give me so many amount of goods or so much worth of services, then you will realize what kind of, let's say, right, welcome you will receive after you come back to India. So these are remittances. So remittances will come into India, remittances will go out of India. That is part of the current account. Now imagine the third one. Imagine you have invested in the foreign market. On your investment that you have done in the past, this year you will earn certain interest. You will earn certain returns on your investment that you have done in the past. That is also part of the current account. So I hope you understand by now, there are a lot of transactions which are associated with transfer payments, incomes, the trade, etc. All of them are recorded under the current account. And on the other side, what about the capital account? What about the capital account? Imagine a company in India will go to USA, borrow from a bank in USA. The company will borrow from a bank in USA, and this is perfectly allowed, by the way. That is, there is a term called as external commercial borrowing. External commercial borrowing, ECB, external commercial borrowing. Under the root of external commercial borrowing, Indian companies which are present in the sectors where FDI is allowed, very important, I'll repeat the statement again. The Indian companies which are working in the sector where foreign direct investment is allowed, they can go to the foreign market. Of course, there are certain conditions. They can go to the foreign market and borrow from the foreign market. And that is essentially called as external commercial borrowing. So if a company in India has borrowed from the external market under the ECB route, can I simply say there is a liability now? What if a foreign investor will bring money and invest in India? There are two types of investments: foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. And the FII terminology that I have written is associated with FPI itself. So understand now, a foreign direct investment, a foreign company will bring money into India, invest and create certain physical assets, such as they will set up a manufacturing facility, they will set up a research and development facility, they will set up with a joint venture or under a joint venture, they will set up a civil aviation company. So whenever a foreign company will invest in India in physical assets, that is called as FDI. So again, it is associated with asset. And when a foreign investor will invest in India, let's say in the stock market, that is essentially in purchasing financial instruments, these are called as financial assets. So that would be referred to as a foreign portfolio investment. So again, this is associated with asset creation or investment in asset. So I hope you have understood by now what is the basic difference between a current account and capital account. And both are very important. In the past, the UPSC has asked the question regarding the transactions which are present in these accounts itself. For example, some time ago, I spoke about remittances. If you have read the budget documents or economic survey or even the World Bank report, which is very often cited in the newspapers, you will know that India is the largest recipient in the world in terms of accepting remittances. The remittances accepted by India historically in the last couple of years has crossed more than $100 billion. And India is a leading country according to World Bank report in terms of receiving inward remittances. So, a lot of these current affairs are also connected to the concept of balance of payment. Now, having looked at the structure of balance of payment, there are certain important terminologies that you are supposed to understand. First one is balance of trade, second one is current account balance, and the third one is capital account balance, and the last one is the balance of payment, whether this is deficit or surplus, etc. Let's go one by one. Now have a look at the first component under the balance of payment, that is exports as well as imports. Now before I go forward, some of you look at the table and ask me, sir, what is this receipt? What is the payment? My dear, I hope you understand this. Whenever a country is an open economy, dollars or let's say foreign currencies, because of multiple transactions can come into the country, and because of multiple transactions can go out of the country. When these foreign currencies will flow into the country, we will record it as receipts. We will record them as receipts, that is income. And on the other side, when these foreign currencies will flow out of the Indian market, when they will go out of India, let's say to USA, to China, to Japan, to South Korea, to Australia, etc., we will record it as a part of expenditure or payments. Now please look at the first very important component, exports as well as imports. Now the exports and imports can be divided into two parts. One is basically the goods. Instead of the term goods, generally they use the term merchandise. Instead of the term goods, they use the term merchandise. And the other one is services. And in fact, please understand the difference between a good and a service. Fundamental difference. Good is visible. You can see a good. You can define the characteristics or parameters of a good in terms of height, color, weight, etc. Tangibility. You can touch, you can feel the goods. For example, this very same marker or the mobile phone that you are holding, the laptop that is there, the fan that is rotating, etc. On the other side, services are intangibles, invisibles. So understand the logic here. Within the current account, they again have a division that is visibles as well as invisibles. Any transaction that is associated with, let's say, merchandise trade becomes part of visibles. But the services trade, remittances, etc., all of these are part of invisibles. Remember, all of these are part of invisibles. Done. Now let's enter into the exports as well as imports. You can divide either imports and exports into two components, that is merchandise and services. Now India will export a certain merchandise, that is goods, and will receive the merchandise, that is import the goods. What is the overall situation? What is the overall situation? Now please understand, there are certain terminologies used here. One is called as deficit. The first one is deficit. Second one is surplus, and the third one is balanced. The third one is balanced. Okay, deficit, surplus and balanced. And these terminologies are used in the context of trade, in the context of current account, for capital account, and for overall balance of payment. And the meaning is very simple. If you are talking only about the trade, let's say for merchandise, what is the value of exports? Compare that with value of imports. If the value of exports, that is of goods, is higher compared to value of imports, let me show you with a number so that you understand this very clearly. Let's say in terms of exports, only for goods, that is for merchandise. If value of exports is greater than that of imports, let's say $100 and this is $70, can I simply come to a conclusion? Because of the merchandise trade, there is a net inflow of $30 into India. Only look at the merchandise trade here. Because of the merchandise trade, there is a net inflow of $30 into India. This kind of a situation is called as a surplus, and this is a surplus in the merchandise trade. And if it is vice versa, that is exports is worth $100, that is we will receive $100. Imports are worth, let's say, $150. In such a case, there is a net outflow of $50 from India. Net outflow, and this is called as deficit. This is essentially referred to as deficit. And if the values are same, that is $100 import, $100 export, this is called as a balanced trade. Balanced merchandise trade in this context. So the three terms are deficit, surplus and balanced. And what is the importance of all of this? Listen to me carefully. You can apply the concept of a deficit, balanced and surplus individually to calculate trade in goods, to calculate a trade in services, for overall trade, that is including goods as well as services, for current account, for capital account, and finally for the whole balance of payment. In the context of India, for Indian context, what are the parameters, or let's say what is the general observation? India generally, I hope you understand, India generally experiences a balance of trade deficit. I repeat, India generally faces or experiences a balance of trade deficit. That is the overall trade, or overall trade, goods plus services. Overall trade, the value of imports is greater compared to value of exports. So that is a balance of trade deficit or trade deficit in simple terms. But if you look at the goods as well as services, in case of goods, there is a deficit in trade. We have a trade deficit. For services, we have a trade surplus. But the deficit in the goods is so high, whatever surplus we receive in terms of services, that is not sufficient. As a result of all of this, overall, we end up having balance of trade deficit. Now, if you look at the top 10 countries, if you look at the top 10 trading partners with whom we conduct the trade, in 9 of these countries, that is the trade with 9 of these countries, we have a balance of trade deficit, and with only one country, that is United States of America, we have a trade surplus. And that is one of the reasons why Government of India wants to sign a trade agreement with USA, so that India's exports India's exports will start increasing. Much more we will be able to export and increase the surplus that we have with USA. So this is in the context of the trade. What about the current account? What about the current account? The current account, whenever I say the current account deficit, surplus or balanced, logic is very simple. You will have to take the sum total on the receipt side of the current account, compare that with the sum total of the current account on the expenditure or the payment side. If the expenditure side or the payment side is greater, it is greater compared to the receipt side in the current account. Let's take arbitrary numbers so that you understand what I am discussing. Let's say in case of the receipt side in the current account, the total is, let's say, $200 billion, just an arbitrary number. Whereas in case of the payment side, the sum total of the current account is, let's say, $230 billion. In such a case, there will be a net outflow of $30 billion from India to rest of the world, and this is called as a current account deficit. And if it is vice versa, current account surplus, and finally balanced current account if both are one and the same. Generally, in case of India, traditionally if you see, in case of India, we experience a current account deficit. We experience a current account deficit. Now some of you will say, sir, why is that so? And second, is it good or bad for the Indian economy? Please understand the problem here. India is not a developed country. We want to become a developed country. In fact, Government of India has put a target of achieving a developed country status by 2047. In order to increase the production, in order to achieve that particular target, we are dependent on lot of the imports. Some of these imports are not essential, that is, we have sufficient production capacity in India, but because these are cheaper in other countries, we will end up importing. We need to contain that. We need to control such imports. And on the other side, we are also dependent on imports which are essential, which are necessary for us. For example, crude oil. India on day-to-day basis consumes huge amount of crude oil, but we do not have sufficient production capacity in the domestic market. As a result of this, more than 80 to 85% of the requirement that we have, we will import it from rest of the world. So there are essential imports, there are non-essential imports as well. That is the precise reason we end up having not only the trade deficit, but also a current account deficit. Having said so, please remember one more point here. The Government of India is taking lot of initiatives, lot of reforms to contain this current account deficit, control this current account deficit. Because the problem here is, if you have a current account deficit, take this very example that I have written on the board. There is a net outflow of $30 billion to rest of the world. India has to pay $30 billion to rest of the world. From where do we get this $30 billion? We should be able to get this $30 billion. You cannot print the dollars. I cannot print the dollars. RBI cannot simply say we have printing machines, let's print dollars. No, we cannot print dollars. So essentially, this current account deficit becomes a problem because we need to have sufficient amount of dollars. And those dollars we generally get from the capital account. Why is that so? Because of the reforms which are being implemented by the Government of India as well as the Reserve Bank of India, we receive a lot of dollars in the form of FDI, FPI as well as external commercial borrowings. For example, until very recently, many sectors were not allowed to attract FDI. But the Government of India in the last couple of years has opened up these sectors. Now we want to attract, we want a lot of FDI to come into the sector. Best example, space, the defense sector, etc. What about FPI? Many reforms have been implemented by Reserve Bank of India. Best example, the voluntary retention route, fully accessible route, etc., through which we want to attract lot of investments into India under FPI. What about ECB, external commercial borrowing? Until recently, that is until pandemic, the limit under the ECB was fixed at $750 million. That has been doubled to $1.5 billion by Reserve Bank of India. So I hope you understand by now the fact that Reserve Bank of India as well as the Government of India have taken lot of these initiatives, as a result of which we receive lot of the investments, a lot of these inflows under the capital account. And the inflows generally are much higher compared to outflows, as a result of which we end up having a surplus. I repeat, we end up having a surplus within the capital account. And these surpluses, that is extra dollars which are available in the market, we will be able to use them to bridge the deficit, that is current account deficit. Now some of you will ask me, sir, what if the situation is not like this? That is, the amount of dollars both put together, that is under the current account as well as the capital account, the amount of dollars that we will end up paying to the rest of the world, or the outflow of dollars, is greater than the inflow of dollars. We have experienced that. What will happen in that particular situation? My dear, point number one, if the sum total of current and capital account under the payment or the expenditure is greater compared to the sum total under the, right, let's say receipt side or the income side. First and foremost, this is called as a BOP deficit. Balance of payment deficit, BOP deficit. And whenever a country experiences a BOP deficit, please understand, such as India, the central banker, that is the Reserve Bank of India, will use the dollars that they have to supply the dollars and ensure sufficient dollars are available in the market. That is, I hope you remember in the beginning of the session I stated that Reserve Bank of India is the custodian of forex reserves. It holds forex reserves. The Reserve Bank of India will use these forex reserves to ensure that sufficient dollars are supplied in the market, and whatever is the need for the dollars, it is taken care of. But what if I tell you that we might arrive at a situation where the deficit is very high, we will not be able to counter the deficit. We will not be able to address the deficit with forex reserves. In essence, what we reach a situation where we will exhaust all the forex reserves, even then there is a deficit in the BOP. Such a situation is called as BOP crisis. I hope you understand. Such a situation is referred to as balance of payment crisis. In essence, BOP crisis represents a situation where a country does not have sufficient forex reserves to pay to the rest of the world that the country actually is liable to, that the country actually owes to the rest of the world. That situation is called as a BOP crisis. The last time we faced a BOP crisis was back in the year 1991. Please remember this. The last time India faced a BOP crisis was back in the year 1991. After that, we have made so many changes in the fiscal policy, trade policy, etc. Slowly and steadily for some time, and very quickly after that, we have built our forex reserves. Today, the Reserve Bank of India holds the highest ever forex reserves in the history of Indian independence. That is, the forex reserves held by RBI have crossed more than $660 billion. I repeat, $660 billion. That's a very, very huge amount of reserve which will help us to counter any such sudden outflows of the dollars from the domestic market. Assistance can be provided by Reserve Bank of India. And that's the reason, please remember now, Reserve Bank of India not only is a custodian of the forex reserves, not only is a manager of a forex reserve, RBI is also responsible to conduct a sale of official reserves. Sale of official reserves. That is, whenever there is a shortage of the forex reserves in the market, it becomes the duty of Reserve Bank of India to ensure sufficient forex reserves are supplied and there is a stability in the market. There is a stability of exchange rate in the market. That is the role of Reserve Bank of India. Now, having looked at all of these concepts, there is one more set of transaction, or let's say one more set of terminology that is associated with the balance of payment. One is called as autonomous and the second one is called as accommodating transaction. One is called as autonomous and the second one is accommodating transaction. What is the basic idea? What is an autonomous transaction? What is an accommodating transaction? Let me divide the transactions which I have listed in the balance of payment into two types. Listen to me very carefully. There are multiple transactions which I have listed in the table here. Let me divide them into two parts. Right? Basically, those are transactions which are conducted independent, I repeat, independent of status of balance of payment, which are economic in nature, which are done in order to earn profit, etc. For example, the imports and exports, foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, etc. So don't you think these kind of transactions are mainly done in order to earn profits? In order to, right, let's say invest in another country, earn certain income. And these investments, either exports or imports, etc., these are done independent of whatever is the status of BOP. Whether there is a surplus in the BOP or the deficit in the BOP, it doesn't matter. These are conducted independent of the status of the BOP. Such transactions are referred to as autonomous transactions. Is it okay? Such transactions are basically referred to as autonomous transactions. That is, those which are conducted, which are independent of status, of balance of payment. On the other side, there is one more, accommodating transaction. There is one more concept, accommodating transaction. What is this accommodating transaction? Let's say there is a BOP deficit. I told you just now, if there is a BOP deficit, it becomes the burden or it becomes the duty of Reserve Bank of India to supply forex reserves, to ensure that there are sufficient forex reserves present in the market, etc. So don't you think this activity that is conducted, I repeat, this activity that is conducted by Reserve Bank of India is completely dependent on status of BOP. It is completely dependent on what is the status of BOP, whether there is a surplus or a deficit. And whenever there is a deficit, please remember, RBI will sell forex reserves to ensure there is a sufficient supply. And whenever there is lesser supply, that is, let's say there is a deficit in the market, whenever there is a deficit in the market, RBI will supply these currencies. And whenever there is a surplus supply, RBI will purchase these currencies, which essentially means RBI is trying to do these transactions to create stability, to stabilize the balance of payment. Such transactions are essentially called as accommodating transactions. So one is autonomous and the second one is accommodating transaction. Now, right, based on whatever we have discussed, let's look at the kind of questions which have been asked by the civil services in the recent past. Question number 1, previous year questions. If another global financial crisis will happen in the near future, which of the following actions or policies are most likely to give some immunity to India? Some immunity to India. First one is not depending on short-term foreign borrowings. Second one is opening up to more foreign banks. Third one is maintaining full capital account convertibility. Right? Many of you ask me, sir, what is the meaning of the term convertibility in the first place? I'll tell you. But the right option to the question is option, right, which has statement 1, and that is basically option A. Why? Whenever there is, let's say, certain crisis which is happening in the global market, I'll tell you about point 3 as well. Have patience. Whenever there is a crisis in the global market, and if you have borrowed heavily from the global market, there could be volatility in the exchange rate. There could be sudden outflow of currencies from the domestic market to international market. So whenever there is a huge volatility like this, it is not going to, it is not going to be in the interest of the Indian economy. That is, let's say you have borrowed heavy amount of money, you will have to repay now. Because of this crisis, Indian rupee will lose value against a dollar. Let's say you borrowed when the exchange rate was $1 is equal to 60 rupees, and now because of the volatility, you will have to pay back $1 is equal to 70. And moreover, you have borrowed for a shorter duration, not even for the long duration. If it was for a very long duration, maybe we can expect that by the time the repayment will come, right, there will be stability in the exchange rate. But because you have done a short-term borrowing, volatility will affect your repayment. That's the reason I said first statement, that is option A, is the right one. Now your question will be, sir, what is convertibility? What do you understand by the term convertibility? Listen to me very carefully. convertibility essentially means, are there any restrictions to convert your rupee to foreign currency and vice versa? Are there any restrictions, or there is absolutely no restriction? Freely you can convert the currencies like this. If there is absolutely no restriction, you can convert the currencies very freely, without any condition, without any restriction. That is called as full convertibility. That is essentially called as full convertibility, which is actually the current situation in case of current account. Please remember, in case of current account, we have full convertibility. But on the other side, capital account, even today we are partially convertible. For capital account, we are today partially convertible. What do you understand by the term partially convertible? If you want to convert the rupees into a foreign currency and foreign currency into rupees, essentially for transactions under the capital account, there are conditions applicable. There are restrictions applicable. And if you're wondering, sir, why do we have conditions? Why do we have restrictions under the capital account? Reason has been that historically, whenever there is a crisis that has happened, lot of investments that we have attracted under the capital account, they will start going outside India. The dollars will start moving or flowing outside India. Higher the volatility, higher will be the outflow. And that will create lot of destability. It will create lot of volatility in the domestic market. To control that, we have imposed restrictions over the transactions under the capital account. Hence, again I reiterate, in case of capital account, we have partial convertibility, and in case of current account, we have full convertibility. Please remember. Now look at the statement number 3, maintaining full capital account convertibility. If you have full capital account convertibility and there is a crisis, don't you think there will be a sudden outflow of dollars from India? Right? Do you think you are providing immunity to India? No. Right? You are not providing immunity. So statement 1, not depending on the short-term borrowings will provide certain immunity, is absolutely the right option. Hence, A is the right option. Second question, with reference to balance of payments, which of the following constitutes the current account? First one, balance of trade. Yes. Foreign assets, no. Right, so wherever 2 is there, you can eliminate. Balance of invisibles, yes. Special drawing rights, no. Right, so first one is correct, third one is correct. Right option for the question will be option C, 1 and 3. Let me go to the next question. Previous year question. The balance of payments of a country is a systematic record of. It's a record of what? All import and export transactions of a country during a given period, normally a year. Yes. What about the remaining 3? Let's eliminate them. Goods exported from a country during a year. It's a part of the balance of payment. But if you look at the statement 1, it is much more inclusive compared to statement 2. Because please understand, if you see the instructions given by the UPSC, which are printed in the first page of the question paper, UPSC clearly states that there might be more than one option which are correct for a particular question. If that is the scenario, choose the option which is most suitable, which is much better, choose that option. So if you ask me, sir, goods are recorded in the balance of payment. Yes, goods are recorded, but it is only one component of the BOP. If you look at the statement A, it is much more inclusive. It includes all the import transactions, all the export transactions. What about C? Economic transactions between the government of one country to another, again part of the BOP. D. Capital movements from one country to another, again part of the BOP. Whereas statement A covers, right, all the transactions, inflow as well as outflow transactions. So these are the various questions which have been asked in the recent past by the UPSC regarding the concept of balance of payments that we have discussed just now. If you like this initiative, hit the like button, provide your valuable comments in the section below, and if you yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it now. Thank you. Have a great day.
NCERT books are unavoidable to crack the IAS exam. Not only is the content of these books authentic, but these books also help a civil services aspirant to build conceptual clarity. And most importantly, lots of questions in the civil services examination are directly asked from NCERT books. But the aspirants often find it difficult to cover these books, or worse, they even end up ignoring these books. We at Unacademy IAS English are going to make the reading and understanding of the NCERT books easier. We present NCERT Fundamentals course, a free initiative of Unacademy IAS English. What are the highlights of this program? Comprehensive coverage of the most relevant NCERT books for the civil services exam. Prelims and mains practice questions in each session to test your understanding of the fundamental concepts. This course begins from 12th of July every day at 6 p.m. right here on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel now.